Nearly 24 female inmates could move a step closer to freedom next week when they appear before the State Pardon and Parole Board seeking to have their sentences commuted. The women are part of a pool of inmates who are in prison for crimes that no longer carry lengthy prison terms. And after voters and the legislature approved reforms aimed at reducing Oklahoma's burgeoning prison population.
Oklahoma has long held the dubious distinction of having the nation's highest incarceration rate for women, and recently passed Louisiana for the top spot in overall incarceration. In an effort to address the issue, voters 2 years ago approved State Question 780, which reduced penalties for low-level drug possession offenses. But hundreds of current inmates still face lengthy prison sentences because their conviction predated those reforms. Earlier this year, a campaign was launched to reduce sentences for many of those nonviolent offenders. John Estes is Chief of Staff for Oklahomans for Criminal Justice Reform.
The reality is, if a lot of these folks who are in prison today had been arrested for the offense they were arrested for, they wouldn't be sent to prison. They would likely get treatment and they would get a misdemeanor citation. So we're trying to make their sentences meet current law.
The State Pardon and Parole Board, which uses a two-step process to consider commutations, has given the okay for 23 inmates to move to the second phase of the commutation process, but not without some reservations.
Pardon and Parole Board asked for a plan to provide services to these people, and we have delivered that plan to them. We've been listening to their requests, and we feel like we've accommodated their request, and we feel like we've actually gone above and beyond their request. 3
Tulsa-based nonprofits, including Family and Children's Services, the Mental Health Association of Oklahoma, and the Residence Center for Women, have since stepped up to provide those services. Stephanie Horton, the director of the Criminal Justice Collaborative with Family and Children's Services, says the women will face a number of challenges if and when they're released from prison.
They've been separated from their families, from their children. Many of them are battling substance abuse and they're trying to stay sober. They'll have struggles with housing and employment and transportation, and those are all things that we've talked to them about, and the community's really supported them and is willing to offer them.
Melissa Baldwin, the Criminal Justice Director for the Mental Health Association, says navigating the available services, especially in rural areas, can be particularly difficult for inmates who've spent several years behind bars.
They might need help with housing or education or counseling and various services and support. So really our goal is, how do we connect with them, learn their individual needs, strengths, and gaps in their communities, and go ahead and work with our community partners across the state to get them a plan and get them connected.
Finding a job is often one of the biggest hurdles that former inmates will face.
Some things as simple as resume building skills and how do you appropriately deal with your time of incarceration and an interview. Those are all things that we'll be able to work with community partners and try and link them to those services if that's what they need.
Some potential employment offers have already been made for those inmates seeking commutation. Tulsa-based Bama companies extended invitations to 7 women to apply for a job and submitted letters that Pardon and Parole Board members can take into consideration as they consider commutation requests. Kayla Jo Jeffries has another employment plan if she's freed. Jeffries earned her cosmetology degree while a prisoner at Mabel Bassett Women's Prison. And Kathy Hodges with the Residence Center says it turned out to be a good move.
She has secured employment at a beauty shop in the town that she's releasing to, and the day after release she will start working.
Like Kayla, most of the women who will be considered for commutation next week have minor children. Hodges points to the case of Juanita Peralta, whose oldest daughter is now raising her younger siblings.
All of them want their mother, need their mother. Their mothers want to be with them, and that's huge for the futures of those children.
Estes says ultimately, Oklahomans for Criminal Justice Reform would like to start a conversation about making the reforms in State Question 780 retroactive to release more nonviolent offenders, thereby reducing the state's prison population and reintegrating those inmates back into their communities.
This commutation campaign is not just about getting people out of prison, it's about making them successful when they do go home. So we want to show the state and show our policymakers what a true comprehensive treatment model looks like, and we want to show them that it'll work.
The board will consider the commutation request at its next meeting November 7th. If approved, the request would then go on to the governor, possibly clearing the way for the women to be reunited with their families for the holidays.